She knew something had changed when she stopped looking forward to Fridays, not because she disliked her job, not because she was exhausted, but because the difference between Tuesday and Saturday had become negligible. She noticed it on a Friday evening while sitting in traffic, watching the red brake lights stretch endlessly ahead of her. The radio played softly, her phone buzzed with messages, co-workers celebrating the end of the week, friends sending casual invitations. She didn't feel relief. She felt continuation. The week had been productive, efficient, predictable, meetings attended, deadlines met, decisions made with the kind of clarity people admired. "You're so steady," her manager had told her that afternoon. "Nothing rattles you." She had smiled politely. Nothing rattles you? She used to take pride in that. Now she wasn't sure whether it was a compliment or a diagnosis. When she finally reached her apartment, she carried her bag inside and placed it in the exact same spot she always did. Keys in the bowl, shoes aligned neatly, jacket on the hook. Rituals created order. Order created calm. Calm created days that passed without incident. She changed into comfortable clothes and poured herself a glass of water. The kitchen light cast a soft glow across the countertops. Everything was clean, controlled, maintained. She leaned against the counter and tried to identify what she was feeling. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't frustration. It was the absence of contrast. Her life had become so optimized for stability that the edges between effort and rest had blurred. Weekdays were structured, weekends were structured differently, but both followed design. Nothing surprised her anymore. Years earlier, she had craved this exact outcome. She grew up in a home where stability was fragile, income fluctuated, emotions fluctuated, plans changed abruptly. She learned early that unpredictability had consequences, so she decided she would build something solid, and she did. She chose a career with growth and security. She saved aggressively. She avoided unnecessary risks. She ended relationships that felt volatile, even if they were passionate. Passion, she learned, often came attached to instability. Stability was cleaner, more mature, more sustainable. Her phone buzzed again, a message from a friend. "Drinks tonight? Last minute. But come if you can." She stared at it longer than necessary. Nothing prevented her from going. She simply didn't want to disrupt her routine. She typed, "Maybe next time. Next time." She had been saying that for years. She moved to the couch and sat down without turning on the television. The silence felt thick but not uncomfortable, just neutral. Her mind drifted back to her early 20s when Friday nights felt charged with possibility. Not always good possibilities, not always wise ones, but alive. Back then she didn't know where the night would end, who she might meet, what conversation might linger into the early morning. There had been risk in that, and risk meant vulnerability. She had outgrown that, she told herself, but had she outgrown it or avoided it? She stood up abruptly, unsettled by the question. She walked to the window and looked out at the city. Lights flickered. Somewhere, laughter echoed faintly from the street below. Life was happening in unpredictable ways. She felt separate from it, not excluded, self-contained. She tried to remember the last time she had done something that didn't make sense on paper, something without measurable benefit, something that risked embarrassment or inefficiency. She couldn't. Even her hobbies were optimized, workouts planned for maximum effectiveness, books selected for professional insight, travel itineraries carefully structured to avoid wasted time. Nothing in her life was chaotic. Nothing in her life was urgent. Nothing in her life demanded courage. That word caught her attention, courage. She associated courage with crisis, speaking up in meetings, negotiating salaries, ending relationships that no longer worked. But there was another kind of courage, the kind that allowed for unpredictability, the kind that tolerated not knowing. She had spent years eliminating not knowing. It made her competent. It also made her insulated. She walked back to the kitchen and opened her laptop. Out of habit, she reviewed her finances, investments growing steadily, emergency fund fully stocked, long-term goals on track. She felt a quiet pride. She had protected herself. But as she stared at the numbers, she realized something unsettling. She had built a life designed to minimize downside. She had not deliberately built one designed to maximize depth. The two were not the same. Her thoughts shifted to work, the promotion she was likely to receive next quarter, the increased responsibility, the higher salary. It was the logical next step. And yet, imagining it didn't spark anticipation. It felt like extending the current trajectory further into the future. More stability, more predictability, more days that resembled each other. She closed the laptop slowly. If she continued exactly as she was for the next 10 years, what would her life look like? Financially secure, professionally respected, emotionally even was the word. No sharp lows, but no sharp highs. She sank back onto the couch and allowed herself to sit with that thought without immediately reframing it. For years, she had believed that eliminating extremes was the goal of maturity. Now she wondered whether extremes were part of aliveness. Her phone buzzed again. Same friend. "You sure? It won't be the same without you." She exhaled. The cost of staying home tonight was small. The cost of always staying home was harder to measure. She imagined herself 5 years from now, still declining spontaneous invitations because they didn't align with her structure. She imagined looking back and realizing she had slowly edited unpredictability out of her story. Not through one dramatic choice, through 1,000 small ones. She stood up and walked to her bedroom. She opened her closet and hesitated. Going out would mean being slightly tired tomorrow, slightly off schedule, slightly less optimized. The consequences were minor, but symbolically it felt larger. It meant choosing experience over efficiency. She caught her reflection in the mirror, composed, capable, in control. She had become very good at control. She picked up her phone and typed, "I'll be there." The decision was small, almost trivial, but as she changed clothes, she felt something unfamiliar, a flicker of anticipation not tied to productivity or outcome, just a possibility. On her way out the door, she paused. This wasn't rebellion. It wasn't transformation. It was a recalibration, a reminder that stability was meant to support life, not replace it. As she stepped into the night air, she felt slightly uncomfortable, slightly unplanned, slightly exposed. It was subtle, but it was real. She didn't know what the evening would bring. It might be forgettable, it might be ordinary. That wasn't the point. The point was that for once, she hadn't calculated the return. She had chosen motion over maintenance. And as she walked toward the sound of distant laughter, she realized something quietly powerful. Security had protected her from the chaos of her past, but it did not have to dictate the limits of her future. Tonight would not change her life, but it might change her relationship with control, and somewhere ahead, she sensed there would be a moment far more consequential than this one. A decision that would ask her to choose between remaining optimized and becoming expanded. When that moment arrived, she wanted to recognize it, not as a threat, but as an invitation.